Okay, hey, so I know this is kind of an interesting topic. I know it's not something that a lot of you are used to maybe having a class on. And so really quick, I want to kind of poll you guys. How many of you have ever worked with a client that is environmentally sensitive? So give me a one in the chat if you've ever worked with somebody that's environmentally sensitive. It doesn't have to be mold either. It could be something else. All right, Teresa, see you. Randy, you are that client. Me too. Awesome. Brianna. Okay. Peggy. Very good. Okay. Give me a two in the chat if you've been through a personal mold journey to any degree. So like you've found mold, doesn't necessarily mean you've had health issues, but you've dealt with mold personally as well. Um, okay. Good. All right. Sherry, Randy. Okay. Awesome. All right. So why are we why are we talking about mold and why in the context of real estate? Why and you know why am I teaching this? First, I want to talk about our story a little bit because we have a personal mold story that's pretty significant. It's changed our lives forever, and so it's deeply personal, of course. And as we are somewhat mostly on the other side of it, people that have gone through significant mold will tell you it's just like it doesn't ever quite the story doesn't ever quite end. Um, I believe that agents can actually play a really crucial role in helping some of these families, especially buyers. And so I'm going to give you just a really quick game plan for what we're going to do today. We're going to kind of try to cover three things. I'm going to try to not talk too much. We'll have time for question and answers towards the end here. But the first thing we're going to do is just simply talk about mold. We're going to go into a little bit of mycology, just the basics, kind of try to dispel a few myths and things like that. Inspection, remediation, things like that. We're going to talk about the health impacts as well and understanding the consequences. And then also kind of the personal story that a lot of these families have, you know, the toll that it takes on families, just so we can understand and try to have some empathy for what have gone through. And then the third thing we're going to do is where we come in as agents is trying to find them safe places to live. And so we're going to kind of go through some practical things to try to figure out how can we come alongside them in the best way. And so we're going to mostly be focusing on buyers today and them trying to find a new property. So we only have so much time. So I'm going to try to condense a lot in here. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and I will address them as we go forward here. So let me make sure I've got my slides going, which I think I do. All right, so let me paint you a little picture here of our kind of personal story, and this will be brief, but this is our family right here. We pretty normal, crazy, but healthy family. This is going back to around 2016, and so that was us just in 2016, not really that far. One of the things that happened between 2017 2020, we actually had a 7-year gap there, and then we had 3 more kids. So this picture's kind of small, but you can see there's 3 more littles in there, Emery, Judah, and Joshua. And so we had 6 kids. And my video's freezing. Oh, no. I'm going to keep going, and if that keeps happening, let me know. Hopefully we'll stop freezing. Okay. So we had 3 more kids. Text me again, or send me a chat message again if it keeps becoming an issue. All right, so this is a very long and winding story, and I cannot get into all the details. We've created some videos about it, and I've shared it with you guys, kind of our CREN family, in the past as well. But starting right around in 2018, we started having some very significant health issues. And this is just sort of a snapshot, some of these pictures of the things that we went through. It started off with my daughter, Abby, having seizures, and no history of epilepsy, you know, nothing to speak of. And then my daughter, Lily, started having GI issues, a whole host of issues, and then she started having seizures as well. And so all these pictures where you see the head wraps, if you're not familiar, these are EEGs so they're testing like the electrical function of the brain and kind of seeing if they can capture electrical activity that would indicate some kind of seizure activity. So we did a lot of those. I think Lily has done maybe 9 EEGs, something like that. It's pretty crazy, but you can kind of see through some of these pictures, just the extent of the struggle that we went through. And we really did. We went through 2 years of, we lost count of how many ambulances we had at our house. We lost count at how many ER visits, how many inpatient hospital stays. We went through the gamut of dozens of doctors and just trying to diagnose the problem and figure out what the heck was going on with our family. And it was extensive. I'll just tell you that it was life-changing. I had to stop working and be home full time. It was truly really devastating for our whole family. And one of the keys that kind of helped us unlock our mold story was we finally, after a couple of years, we had people start telling us, hey, have you ever considered environmental problems? Maybe mold, maybe it's, something. Did you test your water? Do you have radon? Like, people try to be helpful and they're throwing out all these things. And so we actually started exploring mold. We started working with a functional medicine doctor that actually took us seriously, which we had a lot of doctors that kind of stopped listening to us completely. And we found some mold. And so this is my daughter's bedroom in the basement. This was Abby and Lily's bedroom. And it's hard to see here because this is like during remediation, but this is a basement window well right there in the back. And every time it would rain, it would leak behind the window, behind the drywall. And we would see a little bit of water and we'd put a towel on it, like no big deal, like what I think most people would do. But mold was growing behind the drywall and on the baseboard in the back. And so it was totally hidden. We had really had no idea. But this is the bedroom that my two daughters that had seizures started. That's what they shared. And so they had that in common. And so we went through, we started this process of like, okay, it's mold. We figured it out. So we went through the process of remediation, all of that. Long story, we remediated other parts of the house as well. The other thing that was happening in our lives, oh, by the way, this is the window after we took it out. And it didn't look that scary. It didn't look like a crazy huge wall of Stachybotrys, like crazy black mold or anything like that. There was some discoloration from the water staining and then some of this white powdery material and then a little bit on the baseboard. But I mean, we're talking like inches. It was not a really huge, significant amount of mold. So the other thing that was going on in our lives at this time was we started a youth center. It was called The Bridge. It's in Canyon City, Colorado. And the whole mission was to reach lost kids. So kids that didn't go to church. Probably like 90% of our kids had never been to church before. And so our goal was to reach those kids and create relationships with them and share the gospel with them. This was in Canyon City. It's the prison capital of the country. There's 14 prisons down there. And so it was an interesting and fun journey. And I can't get into too much detail here on like that. That's a whole nother story, but here's some pictures of inside the bridge. One of the things that we did at one point is we redid the roof. This is about a 150-year-old building, and we redid the roof, and it was extremely, extremely water damaged. Some of these pictures here show how we were cleaning ceiling tiles off after we redid the roof because there was so much dirt and dust and material. There was many hundreds of these drop ceiling tiles because it was a 12,000 square foot building. And so this was a project we did to clean those off. And it was just terrible. No one wore a mask. It was truly awful. This picture at the bottom is my daughter, Abby. So the one that's holding the broom. And one of her jobs that day was to wipe off some of this dirt and dust and things like that. We didn't realize it at the time. We didn't put it together. But a few months later, we were looking back at pictures and looking at dates. And Abby's first seizure was the next day after doing this. And gosh, I didn't think I'd get emotional today, but so we had kind of two major things going against us. We had this huge building that we spent lots and lots of time in, very water damaged, and then we had our house as well. And so it was really this recipe for disaster for our whole family to be very, very sick. And so long story short, we ended up evacuating our house, and we threw away or sold over 50% of what we owned. It included basically all of our furniture, all of our books, anything that we couldn't really clean that was cross-contaminated, we had to just leave behind. And so we found a new house. We moved actually up closer to Denver so we could be closer to family and doctors and things like that. And this is a picture of our family today. It's probably about a year ago. And we are much, much healthier in a much better spot. Getting out of exposure was truly the key for our family. And so this is Lily. She was the one that had really the most significant health issues. You saw her in that picture in the wheelchair because there was a point where she couldn't walk anymore. But this was about a year ago for her. She was able to get her jiu-jitsu orange belt. This is me and her getting our final certification for Lucky, her service dog, which was just really so cool. But as soon as we moved, within a week or two, we got probably 70, 80% better. I mean, it was a dramatic, after so many doctors and so many labs and so many treatments and supplements and gosh, you name it. All it took for us, at least initially, was to get out of the exposure. And so the majority of our family had extreme relief, almost instant relief from symptoms, which was really, really cool. And so we then started on our healing journey, which is we're probably about 3 years into now, kind of being post out of that house. And it took my wife and I about a year. But one of the things we did after we were sort of able to kind of breathe for a few minutes and just not be in that crisis mode every single moment of every single day, we started telling our story a little bit more, being a little bit more public about it. We started helping people, and we decided to set up a website to kind of go over our story a little bit. We recorded a YouTube video, and it kind of goes into more detail about the health issues and those types of things. And one of the things that started happening is our phone started ringing, and my wife's Facebook Messenger started blowing up, and we get these people from all over the country that come to us looking for advice and tips, and like starting at the very beginning of their journeys and trying to figure out, okay, what's next? What do we do? And so this is something that we kind of started as just sort of this side thing to just try to counsel families and just try to redeem some of the things that we feel like we went through this for a reason. God allowed these things in our lives for a reason, and we wanted it to be redeemed. And so we spent some time doing that. Another thing that happened was I decided to get certified as a mold inspector. And so I went through that process of 2 or 3 certifications. There's so many dozens of them. And it's just sort of an ongoing process that just never ends. And I decided to set up a small company where I could help families that are local that have really extreme medical problems like we do, help them do inspections. And so we set up this thing called Mold Freedom. And that's what I do now. I probably do maybe 2 inspections a month, and go and help these extremely medically sensitive families kind of work through it. We had so many bad experiences with inspections and remediations that we just gosh, we could do this better, I think. Even though we don't have like many years of experience and training, we had the heart behind it to be a person's advocate. I felt like we could do a pretty good job with that. And so that's kind of, in a nutshell, our journey. The next thing I want to kind of cover is just getting into mold itself. And this part will be brief because there's just so much to cover. But I want to dispel a couple of the myths, give you an idea of what to look for, and then what just the basic process is. And so let me just give you a couple high level things on mold. Okay, so for one thing, we live in mold every day. It's ubiquitous. It is in the environment. It is everywhere. And there is no such thing as a mold-free home. And so, people will say, I just want to have a mold-free home. Well, it doesn't exist. So you could go to the cleanest hospital room in the country, and you are going to find mold spores. You're going to find fragments of mold spores and things like that. So in the inspection industry, what we're really trying to get to is what we call normal fungal ecology. Mold is a very important part of our ecosystem. It's a very important part of our lives. And so, but having it in amounts that can make people sick, obviously, is not what we want. So we want to take families from the elevated fungal ecology down to the normal fungal ecology, and that would be through like a proper remediation. But homes truly are perfect breeding grounds. And I won't go into the history here, but right around the 70s, 80s, a lot of our building engineering changed. A lot of the building materials that we use changed. The airflow inside of our homes is much, much tighter than it used to be. You go into an old house and say, oh, it's kind of drafty in here. In some ways, it was engineered that way, and it actually allows better airflow and the building to breathe a little bit better. Well, our modern buildings don't do that. We rely too heavily on our HVAC systems to make the air go in and out. And so that actually is not necessarily a good thing. But it's also the building materials and stuff, and I'll touch on that. But just to give you an idea, 1 square inch of mold can produce over 1 million spores, and then potentially billions of mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are the organic chemicals that mold produces, and that's a very important part of its life cycle. It actually uses that to defend itself against other molds, but it can be very toxic to humans. Let's see, next slide here. So mold, just like any other organism, or mammals or humans, it needs food and water. It's just, these are the basic building blocks for it to grow, for it to reproduce, for it to thrive. It has to have food and water. And our modern houses really, unfortunately, are they're the perfect environment. And so we have wall-to-wall drywall in most of our houses. And what's drywall? It's essentially paper. It's like pre-digested cellulose. And that's the kind of thing mold loves. So if you think about mold in a natural environment in a forest, you'll have the grass on the top and you'll have some soil, and you'll have the mold is kind of living at the bottom because it likes the pre-digested things. And so it really, really likes drywall. It really, really likes our base trim. It really likes the MDF, like the really soft things that we use for all of our trim and things like that. And unfortunately, these things also soak up water. So it is truly the perfect mold food because you can get drywall wet. It will stay wet for 45 days, depending on the humidity level. And that is more than enough time for mold to grow. Mold also is not just a problem in humid climates. And so this is something I hear all the time. Hey, I live in Arizona. I live in Colorado. I live in Utah. I live in an arid environment. Mold is just not an issue, right? And I hear that constantly, and it's just simply not true. If you have high humidity, so like in a place like, let's say, Florida, you are going to have potentially other issues you have to look for. You have to control the humidity, especially in attics and places like that. So you have potentially other problems. And here in Colorado, we don't have to control our humidity quite as much. We're usually trying to add more moisture to the air than take it away. If you have the food and water, you truly have everything you need. And so this is why taking leaks seriously and every kind of water loss in the home is an emergency. And so this has happened to us a couple times in our new house, but we know better now. If we have a sink leak, we stop everything we're doing. We stop work, we stop school, we stop everything to make sure that is completely and properly dried out as quickly as possible. We have water alarms under every single source of water in our house to make sure that there's nothing hidden. It truly is an emergency because mold can begin growing in 24 to 48 hours. It does not take that long. By 48 hours, it's already reproducing. It's sporulating. It's sending off its spores into the air and saying, it wants to create more sources. And so it is truly an emergency. And if you have a leak that is just something that it's just too big to handle, please just call a company. There's so many of these mitigation companies that will come and or remediation companies that will come and dry things out for you. And they don't have to be mold experts because at this stage, you're just trying to control the moisture, right? And so anyway, just if you ever have leaks, take them seriously. If you have something small, you can just go to Home Depot and get a dehumidifier, but especially drywall, MDF, those types of things, we want to get dried out as quickly as possible. And so treat it as an emergency because it is. Because what you don't want to be doing then is calling me or calling some other inspector 6 months later saying, we have health problems and we don't understand why. That's the world I live in. I hear it like every single day. And so got to take it seriously. All right. This is a picture I took of under a window, and it was completely hidden. You can't see it here, but this is carpet, and right above that is a window. That window had failed, leaked down below. This little metal part here is an HVAC little grate that I lifted up where I could lift up the carpet. And immediately here's the tack strips that are rusted and that are dark. And you can see those little lines that are sort of apparent growth right there. But one of the things I want to tell you is don't mess with it. Okay. Don't try not to touch it. Try not to disturb it. Try not to create a lot of airflow on it. The analogy we use all the time is like a tip of an iceberg analogy. So this is a perfect example where I'm just seeing the edge of it. This is probably only represents about 5% of the mold growth in here. It's really like that tip of an iceberg kind of an issue. So this is one where, like, I think the average homeowner is going to just start ripping things up. They're going to pull things back and they're going to create like a bomb. Like a bomb's going to go off in that bedroom with particulate going into the air. And they're going to find out that it's not just on this little tack strip, it's all the way up the wall, on the drywall. Generally, it's going to be a much, much bigger problem than they think it is. And so this is where you call the experts. Especially if it's an area where it could easily be hidden, just call the experts. Another thing I want to point out is that one of the most common questions, and I see the question about bleach. That's just perfect segue. So thank you, Randy. Killing mold does not make it disappear. All right. So this is a huge takeaway for this. Okay. So a lot of people will call me and say, just tell me the type of product I need to buy. And I think most people say like, oh, okay, I know that natural products are better. And so just tell me like what kind of thing I could go to Home Depot and buy, because I want to kill it, and so I'm going to give you another analogy. And this analogy is let's imagine a nice green lawn that you have been watering and taking care of, and then you decide that you want a xeriscape. Okay, so you're going to put rocks there. And so to start off, you were like, well, I think I'm gonna kill it first, and then it'll be easier to pull out. And so you spray it with chemicals, and you kill the grass, right? Okay, it's dead, right? It's not growing anymore. You're not now just going to pour a bunch of rocks on it and call it good, unless you're lazy and that's not how you use xeriscape. You're going to have to actually pull it out. So the first point is you cannot just simply kill it and it just magically poof, it's gone. It disappears. It's still there. And so this is why remediation is so key, because you have to remove it. There's no such thing as killing it. And there's no such thing as cleaning it. You can kill it in the sense that you can make a spore non-viable so it won't reproduce. But so go back to the grass for a second. Let's say you've got a nice green stalk of grass and you put it into your hand, and let's say you rub it together really hard. It's gonna bend, and it's gonna make your hand green and things like that, right? But if you look in your hand again, that whole blade is still gonna be there, right? It's gonna be all intact. What happens though if you take that grass that you killed with chemicals, you take a handful of it, you wipe it around in your hands? What's happening now? You've got hundreds of pieces that now easily blow off into the wind. That is exactly what happens with mold, and so it's why we never spray mold to just magically poof, it's gone, right? The only possible scenario for this would be maybe a little bit of shower grout or a little caulking that has a little bit of mildew on it and things like that. My biggest question at that point is, are you sure it's not behind the wall and coming from behind the wall? But neither here nor there. That would be the only situation where you would wipe it down, but you don't need chemicals to do it. So bleach, please don't ever use bleach on mold. You shouldn't really use bleach in general anyway, but it's going to actually break those spores and that material into more pieces. And then those pieces are so much smaller than a whole spore, and they can actually breathe deeper into your lungs and cause more problems. Okay, so hope that makes sense. Hope that analogy makes sense. But pretty key thing to understand. All right, so the inspection process, briefly. Don't guess on this. So whether it's your own home, a client's home, an investment property, whatever it may be, the inspection is a critical part of this, and you really need to hire an expert here. And so this is an important area too, where as agents, don't ever make claims. Don't try to talk about this world without doing your research, and just don't make definitive claims. Okay, so even in the inspection world, when I'm writing my reports, and let's say I do an inspection, and like right here, I'm pointing up at my finger up at this HVAC vent in the ceiling, and I'm seeing water damage there, and I'm seeing a little bit of discoloration. In my report, I'm going to say, this is apparent microbial growth. I'm not going to say, oh, that's mold. We've got to take care of that. It's mold. Um, be careful. Be careful as agents to not make claims. I know that's kind of obvious, but we're pretty loose with our words sometimes. And so encourage your clients to get tests done. Inspectors ultimately, really what they do is they are moisture detectives. And so a true inspection, by the way, too, is not somebody that comes in for 20 minutes and puts a moisture meter on a shower for a couple minutes and then leaves. A true inspection is a multi-hour, multi-test kind of process. So if you're really, truly trying to find a problem for a family that's medically sensitive, you have to look at every system of the house. You've got to look over every inch of the house. And so just to give you an example, when I do inspections, at a minimum, I'm inspecting for 6 hours. And then I'm spending another hour or two doing the testing as well after that. And so it is a long process. There is no perfect test for mold. And so you have to look at the home and every particular situation. And you're going to test differently based on the budget, based on what area of the house it's in, this type of system and things like that. But the inspector is a really important part of the process, because if you move on to remediation, this next step, the inspector is kind of like the quarterback. They are kind of like leading the charge, and they're telling the remediation company, okay, here's what we found, and here's what I want you to do to fix the problem. The remediator isn't driving that because there's just a conflict of interest there. We'll talk about that as well. All right, remediation process. The main thing here is kind of like what I already said. The goal is always 100% removal of water damage. That is absolutely the number one goal. And so these remediation protocols, just to give you an example, if we find something that's microbial, the remediation protocol says remove that material and go 2 feet in every direction beyond that material and take it out. There is no such thing as spraying it or cleaning it or anything like that. It gets a little complicated if it's structural, and there are very specific, specialized ways to do that if it is structural. But generally, like drywall, trim, lumber in most cases, it just needs to come out. They bag it up while they're inside of containment, and they get it out of the house so they don't have that cross-contamination. The most important thing about remediation, it really is the most important question you should ask if you ever work with remediators, is do you do the inspection as well? If they do the inspection as well, you should walk away because it is a gigantic conflict of interest. It's illegal in 10 states to do that. Colorado is one of those weird states where I am, where there is no laws against it. And so I see it all the time. Remediators that will also do, and you can just see it's very obvious conflict of interest. It's like, hey, we're going to remediate, and then we're going to test ourselves to make sure to give ourselves a clearance that we did a good job. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. All right, so who's with me so far? Can you give me a 1 in the chat if we're good? And just want to make sure I'm not losing you guys. Okay, thank you very much. I know a lot of you have your cameras turned off. I get it. This is a lot of dense, heavy material. I'll try to break it up. Okay. All right, let's get into just the medical side of things quickly here. So there are really sort of 3 categories of issues that people tend to have with mold. The most common kind of, I think, myth out there will be, people will say, well, it's really only an issue to people that have an allergy to it, right? And then it's funny because they sort of assume, well, but my family we definitely don't have allergies to it. That's probably something I would have said 5-6 years ago. We don't have allergies, so we're good to go. And there is such a thing as allergies, though. So if you go to immunologist, if you go to an allergist, there's skin prick tests, there's blood tests, and a lot of times alongside grasses and trees and things like that, they test for molds. And so my daughter's one of those that actually does have an allergy to it, but that wasn't the core of her issue. The second thing are fungal infections. So if you ever look up some of the really traditional studies about mold, this is where you're going to land. But they happen to be actually very rare, and it's very, very unlikely. This is where mold actually gets into your bloodstream. It can cause infections and things like that. It's pretty rare. The third thing, which is absolutely the most common, but also very misunderstood, is the inflammatory response that mold causes. And so we inhale the mold, we inhale particulates, fragments of mold, we inhale the mycotoxins, which is the chemical that they give off, and this causes inflammation in our bodies. The but they differ slightly in how to treat it. The one that is the oldest, and I think the most well accepted, is called CIRS. So it's called chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And my whole family, every single member of my family was diagnosed with this. And it is the most well studied. It has the best data on it. There's tons and tons and tons of peer-reviewed papers on this that kind of goes into it. The difference then is maybe just the protocols can be a little bit different. One really key thing to understand is that 25% of the population is susceptible to this, and they have these the genetics. They have these HLA genes that make them susceptible to biotoxin illness, where they cannot detox properly. And I think the main takeaway here is that because it's an inflammatory based response, it can be a multi-system thing. And so one person in the family will have digestive and neurological problems, and then the other person will have really bad eczema, and they have really bad asthma, let's say. It can be different because it's inflammatory. It attacks different parts of the body for different people. Really quick, there's an analogy called the bucket analogy, and it basically our bodies, we have these buckets that hold biotoxins, and God made our system so incredible. Our livers and our appendix and our gallbladder, we can filter out toxins so well, our bodies. But 25% of the population cannot do that, and so the average person has this bucket, and the biotoxins go in, and the body, there's a plug at the bottom, and the biotoxins come out. This 25% of the population that has these HLA genes, they don't have a plug at the bottom. And so their biotoxins fill up, and finally it overflows, and then they become symptomatic. It starts affecting multiple parts of their body. And so it's a genetic thing. All right. Let me change my screen here real quick. I want to just, I'm already running out of time. I want to go into kind of the human toll on that this takes for families. And I explained my story a little bit, but you can imagine how many parts of your life this potentially touches. And so it's interesting because the difference in genetics means that it's actually a fairly common scenario for, let's say, a family of 5. You've got one parent that has these genetics and they're very, very sick. The other parent does not have those genes. And then let's say these 3 kids, because both parents don't have these genes, they're not guaranteed to have these genes as well. So a common scenario might be a family of 5. You've got one parent and maybe one kid, and they are very, very, very ill, but the rest of the family is completely healthy. They live in the same bedrooms, they live in the same houses, and it becomes very frustrating for these family members. It's like, I don't understand why I'm so sick, and it's not just one thing, even if it was like cancer or something, it's like, I can understand that, some people are going to get cancer, right? But these are like multi-system issues. And so these normal families that were at one time, they were physically, mentally, relationally, financially, they're healthy. They're healthy families, are now completely broken, mentally, broken marriages. They're maxed out in debt. And so many have just even like lost the will to live completely. And so what adds insult to injury is that oftentimes, and I see this all the time, is family members and friends, even and sometimes inside their own households, will tell the sick person, eventually it's like, okay, we've been to all the doctors and they say nothing's wrong with you. And so maybe you need anxiety medicine. maybe it's all in your head, maybe, we've had doctors tell us this, maybe your kids are faking their symptoms. It's brutal. the kind of things that people have to endure from even their best family members. And I've been to inspections where the wife is so sick, and the husband is just like, he just completely unsympathetic and just is just tired of it, tired of the whole runaround, and they're ready to leave and call it quits. It is an awful thing to see. Okay, I want to make sure we don't. Want to make sure we have enough time. So, in short, I want to say that these families are devastated. Sometimes they're traumatized, very little hope for the future. And many families end up evacuating and leaving everything behind. If you go back to the recording at some point, you can read this. I just don't have time to, but it came from a Facebook group, and it just gives a sense for the hopelessness that people have as they're going through this journey. So, okay, let's get into the third side of the triangle here, which is how do we help these people, these precious families that have just gone through it. The very first priority is finding a safe place to live. So many of these families that are this sick, they will end up moving. Unfortunately, many of them try remediations and then they fail. They just didn't hire the right company. They didn't do it the right way, and they just got sicker, and then they had to leave. And so, but the exciting thing, the super exciting thing about working with these families is that they are going to get better. I can guarantee that, and it may be 20%, it might be 50%, it might be our family is like 80%, but most are going to get like instant relief when they get out of the exposure. So that's exciting. Like we get to be part of that journey with them. And so this is where realtors come in, because so many of these people, they need to find a new place to live. So kind of obvious where we can come in. All right. I am part of a CERS group online. It's a private paid group. And I actually told them about this presentation, and I just asked them, like, hey, what do you value after everything you've been through? And let's say you're finding a new house. What is the number one thing that you want in a realtor if you're going to go through this? And every single one, dozens of them, said, we want empathy. So they didn't mention competence or the best Zillow reviews or whatever. They just, gosh, we just want a realtor that's not going to look at us like we're crazy. And this is a quote. They're going to take the time to listen, understand what we've been through, and be patient as we try to find a safe place for our family. That's it. It's like pretty simple. And so this is our task, is to listen and be patient with these families, hear their story and listen. One of the interesting things about CERS patients is they're going to develop a heightened sense of sensitivity, especially as they get removed, just a little bit removed from the exposure. They're going to become, their bodies are going to say, this is good. But now I'm putting up these defense mechanisms against these other things. And so many of them develop multiple chemical sensitivities, sensitivities to weird things like perfumes and detergents and VOCs, musty smells, things like that. Our family is completely in this category, and almost every CERS family that we know is in this category. And so you have to be willing to kind of trust their judgment and just take it at face value. So if you're doing showings with one of these people and they walk in a house and they just, oh my gosh, I'm getting a headache, like immediately, they're not making it up. They are probably smelling active mold sporulating. That's what that musty smell is. It's currently wet mold that is actively sporulating. That's probably what they're smelling. They're breathing it in, and immediately their body's saying, no, don't go in here. And so you've got to kind of let them listen to their bodies and just be open to listening. And so let your clients drive that process. One of the things I'm going to be developing here, and I will get this out, is sort of like an intake form. So if you're interested in working with these kind of clients, I'm going to develop like an intake form that you can have them fill out and just have them answer some of these questions. Hey, are you really extra sensitive to perfumes? Are you extra sensitive to this? And just kind of get an idea of some of the things that they're looking for and where they can be the most sensitive. All right, as you get into actually looking for properties, I'm going to fly through these pretty quick. Okay. Our whole goal in doing this, and the client might drive a lot of this, and they should, but we can come alongside them as much as they allow us to help them pre-screen properties before we do showings. And you have to ask them what's important to you. But the whole goal of this is to help them mitigate risk. And so we are trying to help them avoid water damage, buildings that have already been water damaged, or there's a situation where there's an increased likelihood of water damage. And so these are the types of properties that I would say absolutely no. It's a hard no. I'm not even going to look at these properties. So any kind of history of major water damage, flood, leaks, especially sewer leaks, like just don't even do it. Don't even go there. They're almost impossible to clean correctly. Storm damage, things like that. No flat roofs. No floodplains if possible, low-lying areas, poor grading. If the house is at the very bottom of a huge hill, probably not great, especially if there's like a basement involved. You are going to probably get extra moisture in the soil around the house, which is not good. History of fire, any kind of history of mold remediation. These are like the hard no's. Like don't even go to these properties. Some things to be cautious of. And I wish I had more time to kind of get into details here, but trying to avoid properties that are too old. One of the things I mentioned earlier is that water damage is extremely common. I think the EPA has estimated that up to 80% of structures in the US have some form of water damage. And so it is going to happen. The structures are going to get wet at some point. And so the longer the property lasts, the older the property, the more likelihood that it's had issues in the past. Crawl spaces, subterranean basements, finished basements, really, really tough because you can't see issues with the slab. You can't see issues with the concrete, which is very porous. Siding damage, roof damage, things like that. All right. This is an area where you need to let the client drive. So there's just one more quick list here. Other things that they might need to avoid, and they're going to tell you that they need to avoid properties with carpet. Properties that look cluttered, they're just generally dusty and dirty and not well maintained. Properties that are near farms, ponds, streams. And there's a number of reasons for this because there's a lot of particulate in the air that will get into the house eventually. One example I see often is like somebody would put a chicken coop way too close to the house, and all of that waste, all of the feed, all of that stuff is getting, that air is getting into the house and creating air quality issues. And then this is another one, properties with major kitchen and bathroom renovations. They're impossible to inspect. You don't know, they may have hidden an issue. So again, let the client drive on a lot of this kind of stuff, but hopefully this is like a helpful list. That's another resource I'm working on, is a list of things that you can kind of avoid. Okay, so I want to leave time for question and answers, but here's a few things that you can do as you're going through the process of finding a home. Okay, so before writing an offer, obviously you're going to try to gauge what's the most, what the client cares about. That was kind of like that intake form that I talked about. But part of that pre-screen process, if you're able to get disclosures in advance, be really helpful. If you're able to call the listing agent and specifically ask about leaks and floods and things like that, you'd be surprised at how much stuff is left off the disclosure, but the agent maybe still knows about. And then if a property is potentially a candidate, one of the things, and again, gosh, this is probably for a future class, but one of the things that is pretty common in this world is to do a dust test. This is a dust DNA test. It's a very quick and easy Swiffer cloth that you go around and you get like a sampling of dust around the house. And it's the same technology that crime scene investigators use. They sequence the DNA of the dust and they'll tell you exactly what the species of mold are. This is extremely common for people that have been through mold and are going to try to find a new house. They're going to want this dust test. But one of the things you can do is get that as quickly as possible, maybe even before you're finalize the offer, finalized getting under contract. Always recommending testing. This is an area where, again, they have to drive it. They really have to drive the process. But you don't want them to get too desperate where they're just like, I just need to find a place. I just don't even care what it is anymore. I just have to get out of this other house. Be their advocate. Be a person that encourages them. Hey, look, but we don't know. We don't know the history of this new house. let's at least try to test. And so this is just where, hiring experts is really helpful. So ideally, professional inspection, ideally getting a DNA dust test, but there are plenty of other options. There are even mold dogs. We've used mold dogs many, many times. There's one here in Colorado. It's like a drug dog for mold. And it's very interesting to watch them go through a house. All right, so then when you get under contract, the inspection period is going to be an area where you want to really focus your energy and your time on. Okay, so get that inspection scheduled as quickly as possible. If you're able to even extend the objection deadline, that would be helpful, because sometimes you need a little bit of time for the lab to come back with results. And again, we're not going to just go through a house and just say, oh, there's no water damage, we can't see anything, so we're calling it good. We're going to test. Hopefully the client's on board with that. If possible, asking for an extended inspection window if that's feasible. And again, if you're doing that professional level inspection, it could be half day, all day thing. So that'd be something you can ask for, even right into your contract. And then one really important thing to note, there's no national standard for how much mold is too much. And so the client and inspector, they have to drive the process. And so there is no certain amount of mold in a house where there's some kind of a national registry or index or something that says, okay, this house is not safe, you can't go into that house. It doesn't exist. So you have to really trust the inspector and their kind of professional judgment, and then as well as the comfort level of the client. Ultimately, the client's going to have to decide, because again, there's no standard. So it's pretty interesting that way. Okay, let's pause. Let's pause for questions. I have 2 more slides here, but I want to pause. Let me take a look at these in the comments here. And you can raise a hand if you want to unmute, and raise your hand. I can unmute you, and we can deal with it that way. But I'm scrolling up quite a bit here. I do not travel nationally. I only do it just even in my own county, but I can help you find resources for people. We get to one more question, then I'll get to you here, Teresa. We talked about bleach. How do we know someone's really an expert? I'll talk about at the very end. There's a few certifications that you can kind of look for, and a couple questions that you can ask. So just air quality machines aren't good enough to test during inspection timeframes. Let's see, make sure I understand that question. Air quality. I think what you're asking is an air sample. And so this is sort of the traditional way to do things. So an inspector will come into a room, they'll put a pump right in the middle of the room, and they'll take an air sample. It's an ambient air sample. There are a lot of problems with ambient air samples. They're probably the most standardized way to do a test, because you can control the environment in a way. But there are a lot of problems with it. In fact, I rarely ever use my air pump in the middle of the room. I only use it when I'm looking inside of a wall. I poke a hole in the wall, put my hose, and then draw air out of the cavity to see what's behind the wall. We generally more rely on the DNA dust tests and then source testing. So behind the walls, swabbing mold, things like that. Hopefully that kind of answers your question. And I'm sorry I keep freezing. I saw that again. I don't know why. I've checked my internet out. If doctors can't prescribe a pill, they can't diagnose it. Yeah, that's a good point. What types of home tests do you recommend? Yeah, I'm going to have to go back through these and probably address them directly. I'll give you my email if you want to reach out to me. I was told to use peroxide instead of bleach to clean mold. That's true. So in a situation where you are cleaning it, an example would be a vinyl window. And so the track in a window, it is contained other than the weep holes that are going to go out to the outside. That is an area that mold and dirt can kind of grow in. And so, yeah, don't use bleach. Peroxide is a great way to do it, but make sure you're scrubbing it. You're like trying to remove it. You're not just setting it in there and leaving it. So yes, generally, if there's a situation where you can clean it, that would be great. All right. Any other questions? Teresa, your hand was up and now it's down. That's okay. Okay, go ahead, Teresa. Can you hear me, Teresa? I'm going to mute you again. Sorry about that. I'll give you my contact info here at the end. Alrighty. Let me go back to my slides. Okay, so here's just some next steps. I know that we didn't come even close. No, yeah, sorry, Teresa. I for some reason couldn't hear you there. I know we didn't come anywhere close to touching on all the things, all the ways that you can help clients. But here's a few steps for you. Okay, so one, I think it would be a really smart idea to network with some local people. And so this is going to be finding inspectors, finding remediators, finding general contractors if you don't have them, and then adding them to your vendor list. And this way, if you have questions, you have a situation that arises, you can ask them, you can call the experts and get their opinion, somebody local. And if you need to have somebody come out and do a test, or you need to ask them, hey, what kind of test is appropriate in this situation, things like that. These are the types of certifications that you want to generally look for: NORMI, IICRC, or ACAC. Those are generally the best. IICRC, they actually write remediation protocols that really the whole industry follows. And so really, really good. So asking them general questions to ask these vendors would be: what kind of testing do you do? Do you work with medically sensitive clients? A lot of them will just immediately say, nope, can't do it, not going to do it. But the good ones are going to say yes, and they're going to be familiar with things like CERS. They're going to be familiar with those types of issues, and being able to do a remediation that's like a medically sensitive kind of remediation. And then ask them too, this is important, are you able to help on a quick time frame? So if my client goes under contract, they need an inspection quickly because we need to get an inspection, possibly get lab tests back, and try to do all that before objection deadlines and things like that. They need to be able to do that kind of quickly. And so, and the other question I think would be kind of an obvious one is just to say, hey, like, do you ever have clients that need a realtor that is mold aware? Do you have people like that like are needing to find a new house and kind of looking for a partner to help them do that? And so that's why that networking can kind of can be a helpful thing. All right. So I get that this is a weird topic. I get that I may have scared you away completely from working with clients like this, and that's okay. I completely get it. Many of us say, like, man, I do not need another high maintenance client in my life. And so this is where I would say, pray, and consider if this is potentially a niche that God's calling you to pursue, because it is. And these families truly need help. And the ones that many of them that I've heard of, they'll have agents just write them off. I mean, they'll have an initial phone call, and then the agent just says, no, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to go through the extra work to do a few extra showings, or whatever. And so, if this is something that you're interested in pursuing, my contact information is right here, and contact me. I'd love to have a private conversation with you, and we can kind of answer some more your detailed questions about testing and things like that. And then, and one of the things that I'm thinking about doing is creating just a really, really small group of agents that are willing to help those clients, because I do get requests and I don't know who to refer them to. I don't know who to send them to, because I want them to go to agents that have some awareness of some of these issues and are going to be empathetic and really take care of them. And so if that's something you're interested in, I'd love to we'll just follow up and talk about it. And then also, like, I'd like to be available. So we still do counseling on a very regular basis, just fielding texts and Facebook messages and phone calls and things like that, for people all over the country. So like, if you need help interpreting a test, or you need help finding local resources, or want to be better trained or whatever, I would love to be that resource for you. Another thing, if you want to just get a small taste of what these families are going through, join one of the mold Facebook groups. You're going to kind of get a pretty good idea of what these families are going through and kind of what their questions are and things like that. And you'll see right away kind of some of the things that'll confirm some of the things that I've mentioned. And one of the very, very, very best websites out there for mold information is changetheairfoundation.org. And so I would strongly encourage you to take a look at some of their videos. They walk you through the entire process. There's a little tool that's like, start here. Are you worried that you have mold? They'll walk through the inspection process, the remediation process, what to do and not do. And there's so many mistakes that I've made and that people tend to make. And so that is a great resource that I would send to clients as well. So, okay, final questions. This is the feedback link. If you have a moment to give me some feedback, I'd appreciate that. Just like on all of our classes, I'd be grateful for that. Let me take one more quick look at the chat here. Yes. Okay. So these dust tests, the company is EnviroBiomics. There are multiple companies. This is the best one. And the test there's two levels here. Okay. There's one called a Hurts Me. It's called a Hurts Me 2. This is 5 species of water damage molds. And then there's one that's kind of famous called an ERMI. And that one is 36 species of molds. And yes, they're right around, the Hurts Me, I think is like 180 or 160. ERMI is about 240 to do this. But don't do it without learning a little bit more about it. Okay. So just ask me, or I can maybe send you some videos to learn a little bit more about it. Let me make sure got everything. Thank you so much, Rich. Yeah, some of these I'm not going to be able to address in too much detail. Mold in a crawl space an issue? Yes, absolutely. It's generally inside of the building envelope. And there's so many potential pitfalls with that. You might have HVAC vents. A lot of times you'll have HVAC vents inside the crawl space, which you're not. They used to think that you could do, and now they're saying no, don't do that because you're pumping air, you're putting positive pressure in, and that air has no way to escape. So it's going to go throughout the rest of the house. It needs to equalize, and so you're going to get air quality issues throughout the house. Crawl spaces need to be encapsulated from the ground, completely sealed from the ground. Otherwise, you're going to be getting particulate from the foundation. You also need to keep them at the proper humidity levels. There's a lot that goes into crawl spaces for sure. Okay. All right. Appreciate you guys. Let me put my contact info up here one more time. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Again, I know it's a kind of a funky topic, but I know these people out there, and I feel the sense, and maybe it's just the red car syndrome. Like I'm just seeing it everywhere because I'm in the world, but it sure seems to me that there are a lot more families dealing with this than ever before, and so it's so funny because now we will have a family member or a friend say, "Gosh, I have all these weird symptoms, and the doctors don't know what it is." We're instantly like, "Oh, we know what it is." And so anyway, it's a bigger issue than we give it credit for, and I think we need to be better educated, especially as agents that are helping these folks. So again, last time, here's my contact information, and I'll stay on for questions. Anybody who wants to stay on, I've got time. I will happy to do that. But just reach out to me directly, and we can schedule time to talk. So grateful. Hey, let's pray real quick, and then I'll stay on. So all right. Lord, we know you are sovereign. We know you are good. And today, God, we just say you are holy, Lord. We say, Lord, may your kingdom come and your will be done. Lord, I thank you for just our precious family, our CREN family. And thank you for each and every one of them. And Lord, I just pray that you would go with them today, fill them with your Holy Spirit, give them power, Lord, to be people that are full of love and grace and full of just the hope of heaven, the hope of the gospel. Bless them and keep them in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right. Thank you, guys. Love you so much. Appreciate you.